Hey guys, tonight we're headed deep into the jungle. Thick, tangled, mosquito-thick jungle where vines droop like old curtains, and the stone beneath your feet still remembers a time when gods walked in feathers and gold. You're standing before a stepped pyramid, its limestone face cracked by time but still majestic. There's no guide here, no velvet ropes, just you, the crickets, and a ruin that frankly feels like it's watching you back. You take a step forward, and it happens. A whisper, not yours, not human. Somewhere between a chirp and a gasp, it floats up from the stones as if the temple itself just sighed at you. You freeze, then you clap your hands once sharp and loud, and suddenly, a strange chirping call replies, bouncing off the stone like a ghost bird calling from centuries ago. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge forward, heart, doing that subtle little hop it always does when ancient places start getting personal. This isn't your first ruin, but this one, it sings, literally. And you're here to figure out why. The stone feels cool under your fingertips, even in the thick heat. The platform you're on is vast, lined by long-forgotten steps leading up to a silent temple above. Somewhere in your mind, you remember this place, Chichen Itza, once one of the greatest cities of the Maya civilization. But what's really pulled you in is not the grandeur, it's the sound. They call it the Whispering Temple. Others say it's the Chirping Pyramid. Locals will just smirk and say, listen when you clap. It doesn't matter which name you prefer. What matters is that this place replies. Every time you make a sound near the stairway of the Temple of Kukulkan, something answers. A high-pitched chirp, unmistakably similar to the call of the Quetzal, a sacred bird of the Maya. Historians still argue whether this was intentional engineering or a beautiful accident of acoustics. Either way, it's unsettling in the best possible way, and the mystery deepens the more you walk. You notice how even your footsteps change tone depending on where you stand. Echoes twist around, columns bounce from altar stones, slip through old archways. At one point, you whisper a joke under your breath, and it comes back to you a second later, slightly warped, as if the stone found it only mildly funny. There's a story, a fringe theory really, that the priests of Kukulkan used these echoes to simulate divine responses during rituals. Imagine standing where you are now, dressed in feathers, arms raised to the sky, and hearing your god answer from the temple steps. That's one way to convince a crowd you've got heaven on speed dial. And maybe that's the trick. Not just architecture, theater. The Maya weren't just builders. They were illusionists, symphony conductors of stone and silence. They may not have had microphones or amplifiers, but they had limestone geometry and a very good ear for drama. A breeze snakes across the plaza, rustling jungle fronds and carrying distant howler monkey cries. You shiver. You tell yourself it's just the wind, but the pyramid looms above you like it knows something you don't. And it does. About 1,000 years of secrets, in fact. You pace around the base, your steps falling into a slow rhythm like a heartbeat. The stone is rough, but ordered, each block placed with precision. Some say the Maya carved their cities in tune with the cosmos, aligning temples with stars, equinoxes, and gods beyond time. But this is sound, invisible, immersive, intimate, and somehow even more ancient than the stars above. There's another theory, half joking, half serious, that these temples are still listening. That every footstep, every tourist selfie, every clueless shout from the crowd adds to a growing archive stored in the rock. Not recordings exactly, more like echoes with long memories. You tap the wall gently. Hey, you whisper. Nothing responds this time. But that's probably because the pyramid is still thinking about whether your voice is worthy. You chuckle. It's a nervous chuckle, honestly. Because deep down, you wonder, what if these stones really are alive in some strange, forgotten way? What if they were designed not just to hold history, but to speak it. As twilight begins to creep across the plaza, your eyes follow the long shadow cast by the pyramid. It stretches like a finger pointing towards some unseen truth buried in centuries of silence. And somewhere in that silence, you swear you hear it again, that haunting, impossible chirp, echoing from stone steps that shouldn't sing. You decide not to clap again, not just yet. You stay still, just for a moment, listening. The sun is sinking fast now, and everything takes on that syrupy orange hue that makes ruins look even older than they are. You shuffle across the wide stone base of the Temple of Kukulkan. Every step, careful, respectful. You half expect a pressure plate to click and send you plummeting into a chamber of snakes because, well, you've seen movies. But instead what you get is more birdsong. You test it again. One firm clap. Chirp. There it is. It doesn't come from above, not from the jungle. It bounces down from the stairway, like a bird nested inside the temple itself, calling out from stone lungs. Here's where things get weird. Acoustic engineers, the modern kind with computers and coffee addictions, have studied this phenomenon in detail. And it turns out, the echo isn't random. When you clap near the bottom of the staircase, the sound reflects off the multiple limestone steps in such a way that it mimics the call of the Quetzalcoatl, the Maya's sacred bird. And this isn't some vague, yeah, that kinda sounds like a bird thing. It's uncannily accurate. Now, if you've never heard a quetzal, imagine a fluting chirp with an almost alien resonance, like a piccolo solo in a temple. It's beautiful and eerie, and this temple replicates it with geometry alone. Historians still argue whether this was a deliberate design or a delightful accident. Some believe Maya architects had intimate knowledge of acoustics, passed down through oral traditions, an understanding of how materials and form shape sound. Others argue it's coincidence. Stone stairs, by their very shape, tend to create echoes, and the bird-like quality just happens to overlap. A happy accident. But here's a juicy fringe tidbit. Some researchers say the echo is not just a quetzal. It's meant to be Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god speaking back. Think about it during ceremonies. A priest stands at the bottom of the temple, claps, and a sound echoes down that mimics the voice or call of a god. If you were a farmer, a soldier, or even a skeptical elder watching from the crowd, and you heard your priest summon a divine answer from the sky, would you doubt? You climb slowly now, step by worn step, half expecting the pyramid to speak again. As you rise, the chirp vanishes. It's only at the base that the song appears. Some say it's because the Maya wanted the gods' voices to be heard by the people, not the elites. Others think it was to create a sacred threshold, a place where heaven responded only if you stayed humble on the ground. The top of the temple is modest small chambers, no sweeping halls. But from here, you see everything: the plaza below, the long rows of columns, the jungle pressing in at all sides. It's stunning and very intentional. This was a seat of power, but also performance. Imagine the acoustics, not just from the temple, but from the whole city. Shouts bouncing down alleys, calls carrying across courtyards. It makes you wonder if the Maya didn't just live here, they composed here. The sun kisses the horizon. The trees light up gold, and you picture it a ritual hundreds of years ago on this very spot. A sea of people silent. A priest raises his arms, a single clap, and the pyramid sings back. There's something almost sad about it now. The echoes are still here, but the people are gone. Their language, their rituals, their reasons mostly lost. And yet, the sound remains. Like a voicemail from the past, replaying forever. You begin your descent, careful on the worn steps. A group of tourists claps below. The chirp returns. One of them gasps. Another laughs nervously. A third mutters, "That's creepy." You nod quietly to yourself. It is. Creepy in the best possible way. At the base again, you look back up at the structure. The sun has gone completely now, and the temple glows in the soft blue of twilight. The stars are coming out, one by one, and as the breeze returns, you hear it once more. Chirp. You smile, because now you know it's not just a bird, it's a message. You wander off the main path. Now the echoes behind you still clapping around the pyramid, like a stubborn melody that won't leave your head. The temple has sung to you. Yes, but now you want to know why. Who told the stones to mimic birds? And who was supposed to be listening? You're moving toward the edge of the plaza, where carved pillars and serpent heads poke up from the grass like the spines of half-buried titans. Every shadow here feels longer than it should, and every statue just slightly too quiet. Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, half god, half mystery, and the original diva of this whole sonic performance. You remember hearing that his name means plumed serpent in the Mayan language, and that he was not just a deity of wind and storms, but also symbolically of sound, air in motion. It fits, doesn't it? And the best part, Kukulkan, isn't even exclusive. He shows up all across Mesoamerica under different aliases. The Aztecs knew him as Quetzalcoatl. Others knew him as a bringer of knowledge, even a creator, a being of duality, sky and earth human, and god breath and stone. So you imagine what better way to honor a god of breath than to build a temple that breathes. One story says that during certain ceremonies, priests wore long feathered cloaks to resemble the great serpent. They'd stand at the base of the pyramid and clap one clear sharp strike, and when the pyramid answered back with that bird-like call, the people would gasp. Some would kneel, a few would cry, and let's not forget the quetzal. The bird behind that echo wasn't just any bird. It was rare, beautiful, difficult to keep in captivity. Its feathers were more valuable than gold. Hearing its voice, especially when no bird was present, was like hearing a message from the divine. Historians still argue whether the Maya truly understood how the sound was created, or if they just stumbled upon it while building and leaned into the magic. But fringe enthusiasts love to point out that Maya legends speak of gods who taught humans how to shape air. Poetic, sure, but maybe more literal than we thought. You walk past a half-collapsed stone serpent. Its mouth still gapes open, fangs bared tongue, frozen mid-lash. Some believe these carvings weren't just decorations, they were parts of the temple's sound design, like giant tuning forks or resonators helping amplify ritual sounds. One fringe researcher claimed the mouths of the serpent sculptures were designed to vibrate during certain chants. No evidence, of course. But it's the kind of theory that sticks with you, especially when you're standing here and the wind makes the stone hum softly, barely. But you swear you hear it. As the night creeps in, stars begin to pepper the sky. You imagine the priests tracking those stars, lining them up with ritual days. Perhaps the temple's sounds only made sense under a certain constellation. Perhaps the serpent only sung when Venus rose. Now your brain is buzzing, not from caffeine, but from the sheer audacity of it all. They didn't just build pyramids. They choreographed light sound wind stars, birds gods, and crowds all into a single event. A moment of theater so divine, it echoed across centuries. And maybe the biggest mystery these people left, no instruction manual, just the echoes, and some very smug-looking serpent carvings. You lean against a weathered pillar shaped like a feathered god mid-flight. A mosquito zips by your ear. The jungle hums all around. The pyramid sits behind you, silent now. But in your mind, it's still singing. Not a song you can quite hum, but one you'll never forget. You close your eyes trying to imagine what it sounded like back then. Before the tourists, before the cracks. When feathers rustled, firelight danced off gold masks, and Kukulkan's voice rose from the stone like thunder made of flutes. A breath of wind stirs again. You almost think it says your name, but that would be ridiculous. Right, you're back on the move again, this time tracing a narrow stone path, half swallowed by jungle. The pyramid lies behind you, and ahead, shrouded in green, is another ruin. Smaller, quieter, more modest. But your guidebook whispers that this one held secrets too. Secrets not of gods or rituals, but engineering. Your sandals scuff against uneven stone, and the jungle presses closer now, like it's trying to listen in. You arrive at the Temple of the Warriors. Its columns rise like stone soldiers, mid-march lined up and alert even after centuries. Some are carved with figures holding staffs and feathered shields. Others bear grooves, intentional patterns, like sound waves locked in limestone. You stand in the center of it all and speak not loudly, just a low hello. The sound barely moves, no echo, no chirp, just stone and silence. That's the thing. Not every Mayan temple sings. And that might be the clearest clue that some were meant to. Because when a building is built like an instrument, you can feel it. Take the Temple of Kukulkan again. Its staircases, the ones that chirp, are made of limestone, a material that reflects sound crisply. Each step is like a drumhead. The width, height, and angle create a natural cascade of echoes when sound hits it just right. The result? That crisp, bird-like response. Not just random noise, but layered sound waves, stacked by design. Historians still argue whether this was purposeful architecture or an incredible coincidence. But the fact remains only some temples echo this way. Which makes you think, maybe the Maya were tuning their buildings the way a guitarist tunes strings by feel, by experience, by intuition. You imagine a group of builders standing at the base, clapping once then again, tilting their heads, listening, adjusting a stone, clapping again. Maybe they didn't have formulas, but maybe they had ears. Generations of masons trained to listen to the stone until it spoke. And here's your quirky tidbit of the night. Some acoustic archaeologists suggest the Maya could detect subtle sound shifts from just a few centimeters of material change. They might not have measured in decibels or wavelengths, but they knew the sound of reverence, the sound of awe, the sound that makes a crowd of believers fall silent all at once. You press your palm to a carved pillar. The stone is smooth from centuries of rain and reverent fingers. You wonder how much of this design was for ceremony and how much was for spectacle. Religion and showmanship weren't separate here, they were partners. A priest didn't just pray, he performed, with light fire smoke feathers and, yes, sound. Picture this night falls. Torches flicker. The crowd gathers at the plaza. The priest ascends the steps. A single clap echoes like a divine reply. Gasps ripple through the crowd. He lifts his hands and the temple breathes sound again. That wasn't just faith. That was acoustical theater with God-level stakes. You shift toward another staircase. This one doesn't chirp, but something's still strange. You whisper a sentence just to yourself, and you hear the end of it bounce back from the top. Not all at once, but with a delay, as if the building's chewing on your words before spitting them back out. This isn't a fluke. Researchers have recorded audio at different temples and discovered that Maya architects often built inverted sound paths, spaces where whispers travel far but shouts die quickly. Imagine that. You could hold a private conversation across 50 meters of stone, but a scream wouldn't echo. It's the kind of feature that modern concert halls try to replicate. And suddenly you realize the Maya didn't just build homes for gods. They built sound chambers, instruments of ritual, spaces designed for spoken magic, or maybe just for gossip with really good acoustics. A monkey howls in the jungle. You flinch, then laugh. You'd almost forgotten the forest is still there, still alive, still listening. You duck beneath a low archway. The cool air smells like damp rock and old incense. It's dark here, but your eyes adjust. You feel like you're inside the body of the temple now, its ribs and lungs. You whisper again just for fun. This time the walls take your words and stretch them. A low bending echo rolls away like distant thunder. If that isn't intentional, you think then someone needs to explain why the thunder sounds exactly like a serpent slithering. You exit the chamber, heart thudding just a bit faster. The moon is rising now, silver and silent, and the temple behind you sighs long and low, like it just exhaled your name. You're sitting now, cross-legged on the worn stone of a small overlook perched above the main plaza. The pyramid stands to your left, the jungle whispers to your right, and in your lap, resting like a relic, is your notebook, blank and eager. You came here to understand an echo, but at this point, you're beginning to realize sound is only the beginning. Enter the scientists, modern acoustic engineers armed with 3D scanners, high-speed microphones, and maybe just a dash too much caffeine, have been obsessively trying to decode Mayan architecture's sonic quirks. They build computer models, recreate stone steps at scale, and fire tiny bursts of sound into their reconstructions, like kids with new toys. You know, for science, one team used a laser to analyze how a clap reflected off the pyramid. Not just any laser, this thing could map echo trajectories down to milliseconds. The result: the chirp wasn't just a fluke. It happened consistently at precise locations along the staircases. Not beside the pyramid, not behind it, right there at the base, looking up. Historians still argue whether this is enough to declare intentional design. Some claim it's overinterpreting a happy accident. Others argue it's impossible to ignore the sheer consistency across multiple sites, Chichen Itza, Uxmal, even Tikal. And here's where things get juicy. The Temple of Kukulkan has another acoustic party trick on the spring and autumn equinoxes. A shadow serpent slithers down the side of the pyramid, formed by the angles of sunlight on its steps. Pair that with the echoing Quetzal call, and you've got yourself a full audio-visual God experience. No CGI needed. You lean back, eyes scanning the stars above. And here comes your fringe tidbit of the night. Some researchers believe the pyramid functioned like a calendar of sound, that the chirp changed pitch subtly based on the time of year, due to changes in humidity, air density, or ceremonial placements. If true, that means the Maya could have used the building itself to listen to the seasons. Now picture that. A priest stands at the base. He claps, listens, nods. The rains will come early, he says. And maybe they do. You shift your weight, glancing toward a smaller domed building, half hidden in trees. The caracol, often called the observatory. It doesn't chirp, but it's round. Echoes roll along its walls like whispered secrets down a well, and many think it was used to track Venus Kukulkan's celestial symbol. It's all so interconnected. Sound stars, serpent's feathers time. And you're starting to realize the Maya didn't see these as separate ideas. They weren't building temples and then adding meaning later. The meaning was the design. Another modern study took things even further. Using microphones and maracas, yes, really, they recreated a full ceremonial procession to test how sound carried across the site. The conclusion: from the pyramid steps, a priest's voice could reach over 1,000 people without shouting, and a single drumbeat could pulse through the plaza like a heartbeat felt in the chest. You glance at your own chest. Your heartbeat's picking up again. Not from fear, from wonder. The plaza isn't empty now. Not really. You can almost see them. The dancers, the priests, the children clinging to mother's skirts. The hum of the crowd rising as one. A sharp clap. A quetzal cries out from the stone. And the ceremony begins. You blink and they vanish. Just the wind again. And that low, impossibly patient pyramid waiting behind you. You scribble something into your notebook. What if the temples weren't just built to sing, but to be sung with hiak? It's a lovely thought. A little poetic. Probably not scientifically provable. But maybe it's true. You close your notebook. The jungle sighs. You follow a moonlit path. Now one the jungle has mostly reclaimed roots, crossing like lazy snake's leaves crunching underfoot, and something definitely watching from the trees. Probably a howler monkey. Hopefully, you're heading toward one of the largest ball courts in Mesoamerica. Not exactly where you'd expect to find acoustic secrets, unless you think about it. This wasn't just a sports arena. This was theater, religion, politics, maybe even execution. You step into the court and it swallows you. It's massive. Stone walls rise high on either side, so tall you feel like a child in a canyon. And when you say anything, it echoes like you just whispered into a cave of gods. Hello, you try? Your voice rebounds, distorted and stretched, landing behind you, like someone else said it. The acoustics here are absurd. A whisper from one end can be heard clear as day at the other. And again, it's not an accident. The walls are angled just so. The surfaces are smoothed just enough. It's a sound tunnel, a holy megaphone carved in stone. Now imagine what happened here. Two teams of warriors bouncing a solid rubber ball back and forth, using only hips, knees, and elbows. Above them, crowds watching from the stone terraces. And somewhere, a priest, probably in something wildly impractical, and feathered intoning prayers or decisions. Every word echoing like thunder. Every breath amplified. Historians still argue whether the losing team was sacrificed. It makes for good headlines, but evidence is murky. What we do know is that these games weren't just sport. They were cosmic reenactments, symbolic battles between life and death, sun and moon, rain and drought. You sit where the spectators once did, gazing down into the pit of sound and sweat, and you think maybe the echoes were part of the ritual. A voice from the heavens, a final judgment, or just a way to make sure the high priest's dramatic speech could carry across a crowd of rowdy fans. Here's a fun little fringe theory. Some believe the court's design created specific frequencies meant to resonate with the human chest cavity. In other words, the echoes didn't just reach the players and spectators, they vibrated inside them. A kind of architectural mind control via low-frequency hums. No hard proof, of course, but the idea sticks in your ribs like an echo of its own. And you notice something else. When you walk along the base of the wall, your footsteps seem slower, not in speed, but in sound. They lag slightly, like your movement is being replayed in stone half a second later. It's disorienting, like walking through a memory you didn't make. You whisper again just for fun. Are you still listening? The wall throws it back. Listening. Okay, creepy, but cool. One theory, more grounded than ghost echoes, suggests that these acoustic effects helped enforce authority. The elite and the priests could be heard clearly, while commoners were acoustically swallowed. It's hierarchy through sound. You don't just see who has power, you hear who has power. You walk to the center of the court. The moon is directly above now, spotlighting you like a performer. You clap your hands. Once, the echo bounces from wall to wall to wall, and then, weirdly, stops, as if the court caught it mid-air and decided, nah, that's enough. You laugh under your breath. This place doesn't just echo, it edits. Modern researchers tested how a rubber ball's bounce sounded here. Apparently, the impact created a specific frequency that reverberated upward, so even if you couldn't see the ball, you heard it. Think of it like sonic storytelling, the drama of the match told through echoes and rhythms. You imagine the final moments of a sacred game. The ball soars. The echo follows. The crowd holds its breath. And then silence. The kind that makes your skin tighten. You sit down on the edge of the court, letting your own breath slow. There's something meditative about it here. Sound moves like water, slow, smooth, deliberate. And for a moment, you swear the wall is breathing. In, out, you, echo. You leave the ball court still echoing in your head. Or maybe that's just the sound of your own thoughts bouncing around, trying to make sense of what all this really means. You're starting to realize the Maya didn't just build places for sound to happen. They built places where sound mattered. The next ruin isn't marked on most maps. It's a squat structure overgrown with moss and lichen, crouched low like it's trying not to be noticed. But when you duck through the narrow entrance, stone brushing your shoulders, you freeze. This chamber is whisper thin. Not in space, in silence. You speak without thinking wow, and the room answers. Not with words, but with a shiver of sound that carries from one end to the other. You take a few steps inside. The echo follows like a shadow. And here's the strangest part: when you whisper, it travels further than when you talk normally. A whisper through the right arch can travel across the room like it's riding on air. Historians still argue whether these so-called whisper galleries were designed intentionally or are the happy result of curved ceilings and limestone surfaces. But in places like the Nunnery Quadrangle or El Palacio, the effect is startling. You can carry on a conversation with someone across the courtyard without raising your voice. Sound snakes around corners, hugs walls, finds ears it shouldn't be able to reach. And you realize something chilling: this wasn't just design, it was strategy. Imagine being a priest or a ruler. You stand in the temple speaking to your closest advisors. Down the corridor, acolytes hear every word. Or maybe you whisper a warning and it finds its way to the intended ear without a messenger ever being seen. That's not magic. That's power. Some researchers believe these whisper corridors were used for surveillance, that priests could eavesdrop on conversations from dozens of meters away by simply standing in the right acoustic niche. Others think it was spiritual sound, as a way of transferring energy or prayer. Either way, these spaces weren't silent. They were listening. You pace the room slowly now. A whisper to your left comes back around from the right. You mutter a question, and your own voice answers, late distorted like a stranger saying your thoughts out loud. It's disorienting in the most fascinating way. Here's your quirky fact for the night. In some Maya cities, certain temples had small sound holes carved into the walls, perfectly round openings that weren't for light or ventilation. When you speak into them, the sound travels through a hidden duct and emerges somewhere else entirely. Some call them spiritual tubes, others ancient intercoms. Either way, they make your local drive-through speaker system look like amateur hour. You take a seat on a stone bench, the kind worn smooth by centuries of conversations. You try a sentence at a whisper. This is unreal. And from across the room, the stone sighs, unreal. You don't know whether to laugh or shiver. You close your eyes for a moment, listening. Not to the jungle this time, but to the silence. It's a thick, knowing silence. The kind that holds its breath when you're about to say something important. And then you remember something odd. The Spanish chroniclers who first visited Maya cities in the 16th century, they noted how quiet the cities were. No shouting, no chaos, just ceremony and stillness. Could it be that the Maya preferred soft voices because their temples carried them better? One fringe theory suggests that loud noise was seen as disrespectful to the gods, that true wisdom traveled by whisper. That makes you feel oddly honored to be here speaking softly to stones that were built to remember. You stand and look around once more. The chamber is empty, yet full, like the echo of a thought that hasn't formed yet, or maybe a memory that hasn't happened. And as you step back into the open air, the wind brushes past your ear, light, gentle, like a whisper. The jungle greets you like an old friend with poor boundaries, grabbing at your ankles, brushing your face, humming in your ears. The ruins are farther apart now, less manicured, more overtaken, but the sounds still orchestrated. You follow a twisting path, lined with half-toppled walls and tiny frogs the size of your thumb. They chirp like rusty bells. Birds call overhead. Leaves rattle like rain. It's a lot of noise. And somehow you're starting to wonder, how did the Maya hear anything over this? Then it hits you. Maybe they didn't want to block the jungle. Maybe they wanted to join it or dominate it. You're moving toward a lesser-known structure now deeper in the site, nearly hidden. But this one's different. It doesn't rise up in grandeur. It's sunk low into the earth. As you descend, stone steps slick with moss, the forest fades slightly. So does the sound. Inside, it's cooler, quieter. The jungle doesn't come down here. You try a whisper. Hello. This time, no echo. Just stillness. Historians still argue whether these underground chambers were tombs, ritual spaces, or meditation cells. But some of them exhibit strange acoustics, sound absorbed rather than reflected. A perfect contrast to the loud echoing plazas above. Some researchers suggest these sound-absorbing rooms were used for sonic cleansing, a quieting of the soul before or after rituals. Others think it was practical, a place where the jungle's roar couldn't reach, allowing leaders to think, speak, or interrogate. You sit down on a flat stone. The silence pushes in on your ears. It's the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat. And when you return above ground minutes later, the volume of the world is shocking. Birds scream, frogs trill, leaves hiss. It's a jungle symphony. But here's the thing. The Maya weren't helpless listeners. They were sound engineers. You reach another plaza now, where the stone layout forms concentric platforms. You clap once, and the sound rolls around the edges like water in a bowl. It's not an echo. It's a ripple. And it makes you realize something wild. Sound in the jungle doesn't travel like it does in a city. The thick trees, the dense air, the constant background noise they muffle, bend and filter. If you wanted your voice to carry here, you couldn't just shout. You had to build it a path. And that's what the temples did. They carved air lanes. They sculpted silence. They tuned the land. Here's a quirky fact. Some Maya cities had howler towers, little structures with narrow vents that could amplify a scream or chant into a resonating drone. One researcher recreated it with a conch shell and some PVC pipe. The result, a sound so low and guttural, it made their dog leave the room. Respect. A fringe theory suggests these low-frequency booms were used during wartime, not to cause harm, but to unsettle. Imagine an enemy approaching, only to hear the earth itself growling. Sonic intimidation. Not a bad trick when you don't have steel or horses. And maybe that's the point. The Maya knew they couldn't shout over the jungle, so they outsmarted it. They made architecture that worked with the chaos, that harnessed echoes that whispered in frequencies nature couldn't cancel. You stop beneath a tree where a long line of ants marches across a mossy altar. You smile. Even they seem rhythmic, like part of some grand percussive system you just barely missed understanding. A breeze stirs the leaves. The frogs pause for a beat, and in that breath of silence, you clap one more time. Chirp. Still there, still singing. The temple may be silent, but the land, it remembers the song. You're back near the Great Plaza, now standing at a wide ledge with a view that stretches across stone shadow and time. The moonlight paints everything silver stairs, columns, snake heads, and you suddenly realize something both thrilling and slightly annoying. For all we think we know about the Maya, we don't really know if these sonic marvels were on purpose. Historians still argue whether the pyramid's chirp, the ball court's whisper corridors, and the thunder chamber temples were acts of genius or just architectural happy accidents. After all, trial and error can produce magic, especially when you're working with limestone tropical humidity and spiritual fervor. But here's the problem with that explanation. It underestimates the Maya. You turn slowly, letting your eyes wander across the many structures. So many of them are built with symmetry balance orientation to stars and solstices. It feels unlikely that the sound design was a coincidence. And yet scholars love a good debate. Some argue these structures weren't designed for sound, but just happened to be acoustically rich due to material and shape. Others claim there's too much precision across too many cities to chalk it up to luck. You walk back toward the temple of Kukulkan, your old friend by now, and sit on the bottom step. Gently, you clap. Chirp. Same as before. Exactly the same. You try from the left, then the right. Still the same sound bouncing back from an ancient voice box made of stone. Now here's your quirky tidbit. One researcher once tried to record the chirp using a parabolic microphone and ended up picking up 3 distinct frequency bands, like the chirp had harmonics, not just a tone. They joked that the temple wasn't chirping. It was singing a chord. And here's the fringe theory that will keep you up tonight. Maybe the Maya weren't just copying the Quetzal. Maybe they believed sound itself resonant. Repeatable sound was a form of communication with other planes. Maybe the pyramid isn't just echoing for you. Maybe it's echoing for something else. You lie back on the stone arms behind your head and stare up at the stars. They're impossibly bright out here. And you realize the Maya didn't build in silence. They built in stereo. Stars above, sounds below. Light and echo. Time and rhythm. Imagine being a builder in that age. No calculator. No apps. Just years of experience and a deep cultural memory. You lay a stone. You clap. You listen. You adjust. You try again. And somewhere between limestone and intuition, the building begins to respond. You sit up and glance one more time across the ruins. What if we're only hearing part of the music? What if certain frequencies, long decayed or beyond human hearing, once filled these plazas during ceremonies? Voices layered with flutes, drums, the crackle of fire, the shuffle of feet, echoes will never fully recover like a vinyl track missing half its instruments. You try to hum a note into the stairway. Nothing obvious echoes back. But the silence feels different now. Charged. Tuned. You remember something an archaeologist once said. Ancient ruins aren't just places. They're instruments. You just have to figure out how to play them. And you wonder how many other ruins are waiting unheard. How many temples in Cambodia, or Zimbabwe, or the Scottish Highlands hold secrets in the air between their stones? Because if the Maya could build a pyramid that sings like a bird and still keeps perfect time with the equinox sun, then maybe the greatest mistake we make isn't underestimating the past. Maybe it's assuming the stones have stopped singing. You press your palm against the temple one more time. Cool. Still. Patient. It doesn't chirp now, but maybe it's just listening. You stay seated at the temple's base for a long while. The sky is ink now, a deep velvet studded with stars that shimmer like the reflections of 1,000 unseen fires. No voices, no footsteps, just the hush of ancient things that still remember how to wait. The wind shifts slightly, warmer now. It carries with it the scent of stone dust, wet leaves, maybe even something floral. You can't quite name it. You wonder if the priests smelled the same thing before ceremonies, that soft perfume of jungle night. You rise slowly, stretching legs that are now convinced they've turned to stone. The plaza spreads out around you like a sleeping city, and for a second, you imagine what it might have looked like. Awake torches lining every stairway, dancers in feathered regalia, faces painted with ash and ochre drums, rising in slow, ominous rhythms. Then a single clap. Then a cry from the pyramid. And then silence. There's something sacred in how the Maya used silence just as much as sound. The spaces between the echoes were just as meaningful. A breath, a pause, a choice. Historians still argue whether the chirping stairs were ever meant for common people, or if they were the exclusive realm of priests and rulers. Were they a demonstration of divine connection? A scare tactic? A party trick? Or just a side effect of an exceptionally well-designed staircase? And while academic conferences keep debating it, you find yourself smiling. Because whatever it was meant to be, it is. Still, right now. Still echoing. Here's a final fringe theory for your mind to chew on. A few spiritualists suggest that these echoes aren't just physics, but consciousness. That sound once created never dies. It travels, stretches, weakens maybe, but continues through time. That somewhere in the stars above, the very first priest's voice is still traveling, still echoing outward forever. You look up, the stars don't answer. But the pyramid behind you doesn't argue either. You walk slowly now past stone columns that seem to lean a little more than they did earlier, past trees with roots like gripping hands. You step carefully around a broken altar, its carvings worn, but still fierce. Every surface feels as if it knows you're leaving. You stop at the edge of the forest one last time. Turn, Look, it's quieter now, not because the jungle has calmed, but because you've changed. You hear it differently. The rustling of leaves, the buzz of cicadas, the distant call of a bird. They're part of it, part of the song. You realize you're humming. Not a melody, just tones. Long, low calm, like the kind of sound you'd make inside a cave just to hear the echo return a little piece of you. And maybe that's what the Maya figured out. That when you speak into the world, into the stone, the sky, the very structure of existence, it speaks back, if you know how to listen. You take one final breath, and as your foot crosses from stone to soil, the jungle sways gently and the temple behind you stays still. Or maybe it sighs. Now just rest here for a bit. Let the echoes fade, not just the ones from the temples, but the ones still bouncing in your own mind. You've walked among stone whispers, stood where gods might have answered, and listened to a city that's been silent for centuries. But not really. Not ever. Take a long breath in. Let it fill the corners of your chest, and feel how even your body becomes a vessel for sound. Your heartbeat slow and steady as a drum. Your breath is a soft wind through the corridor of ribs. Your body, like those ruins, is built for sound. Now let that breath go. Slow, gentle, like the temple exhaling. All around you, things continue. The frogs chirp, the leaves settle, the stars spin. You're part of it now. Not just a visitor to old places, but a listener, a keeper of echoes. The kind that you carry with you, not as facts or trivia, but as a sensation, a vibration in the air, a hush that makes the world seem a little more ancient, a little more alive. Tonight, let yourself drift into that silence. Let the stone quiet seep into your pillow, your bones, your breath. The mysteries will wait for morning. They've waited centuries already. Close your eyes. Let the song of the pyramid fade into nothing. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. Maybe by now you've already drifted off to sleep, and if so, we hope this story brought you peace of mind and helped you rest a little easier. Deep sleep makes life better, and we're truly happy to be part of that. Until next time, sweet dreams.